Brandy, take it away.
Andy Craig,
Here.
Max Weiss,
Here.
Ken Jones, Mike Babbitt,
Here.
Krista Hoover.
Here.
Okay. And we have our agenda in front of us.
Move to approve the agenda. A second.
Any opposed? Hearing none. You've approved the agenda. We have our minutes attached.
No minutes.
No. Says they're going to be here at the next
No,
meeting.
since it may be a long one, we just.
Okay. Visitors. We have Steve there. I have too many visitors. And Curtis. Anybody want to have anything? Sorry, option. Okay. Moving to the Harbor Master's report. We'll do that next meeting. And we've got our new business, the Harbor 8 cash flow study draft. And let's talk about that.
Hey, Mike, it's Tony. So in the room, we've got Andy Craig, Max Weiss, Mike Babbitt, Krista Hoover, Brandy Griffith, and then we have Curtis, and then with Steve Nimitz. And then our tech is Andrew Scott. And we'll let you run with it.
All right, I will share my screen. Oh, let's see. There. Okay, so I will just share the report. Can you see that fine?
We can.
Yes.
Yes, we got it.
Okay, great. So I thought I would just basically walk through what this report is, the process we use, and so on. I can pull up the spreadsheet, I can go into more details if there are questions and things like that. But in terms of kind of just a general overview of the report, I think this will serve us pretty well. So to start off, so the purpose of the rate study is really to evaluate where, and there are two approaches. One would be that you want to make sure that you are charging enough based upon your personal situation. The other being more a look at the market for competitiveness. This study does look at the market a little bit just as a comparison, but it really bases the rate recommendations off of your specific facilities and your cost structure and so on. And so grouping those two, I would call it a cost-based study as opposed to a market-based study. And, you know, a market-based study would be something like, you know, you have your peers you identify in your region or type of facility, and you just want to make sure that you're within the ballpark, that you're not overly high unless there's a reason to be high, or you're not too low that you're kind of charging around what others are. But so this, for this cost-based study, what we're doing is looking at all of the costs of your facilities, operating them, maintaining them, replacing them as needed, and so on. So the report looks at all of your facilities, and it includes a couple major projects. The first one coming up being the South Harbor work that is funded with the RAISE grant and some debt. And next up after that is the, they'd written at the time North Harbor, but you know, there's a lot more to it than just that in terms of all the developments associated with the PIDP grant that you're currently pursuing as well. And then we have a few other smaller projects shown over the years there. So what this analysis does is it takes all of that information, and let me flip down a number of pages, and it looks at how costs are generated over time. And so we use this process called a life cycle cost analysis. And basically we're saying, okay, for operations, this is how much there is each year. For these big capital projects, how much is the project going to be? What year are we going to expend that money? Major maintenance and repair activities, how often do you have to do them and what's the amount at each time. And so what we try to do is really just map out all of your expenses over time to get them all in one place. From there, we then discount them, which is basically taking them back into an equivalent amount of today's dollars. And there's, I think, two major pieces with that discounting. One of them is inflation. So, if you think of what something will cost in 10 years, it's going to be in the dollars of that day, it's going to be a lot more, but we make sure that we're adjusting for that inflation. And then second, there's whether you think of it as a rate of return or an interest rate or just a opportunity cost of your money, we also want to make sure that we're taking into account the fact that you have opportunities to use your money, and you save the money and it grows over time, or you invest it in something else. All of these things cause us to discount or reduce the value of those future amounts down to the present. So when we have looked at all of those costs, we consolidate them down to a single number. We then say, okay, if we think about this as if it were a mortgage, how much do we have to be paying into this mortgage to cover what that total amount is over the course of this 30 years that we're evaluating? So that's kind of in a nutshell what this life cycle cost approach looks at. Now, on top of that, we also took into account cash flow, and we took into account some assumptions about the use of debt. And that complicates things a little bit because when you have a bond issue, it has its own costs associated with it. And when you have perfectly smooth expenses over time, it's very easy to predict what you'll need to be setting aside. But when you have large expenditures, such as harbor rebuilds and things like that, you get to years where you have much higher draws on your working capital. And so this cash flow study took that basic rate model, the life cycle cost model, and then what we did is we made tweaks to what the recommended rate changes would be in order to make sure that you'd have sufficient funds over time. So it's not an exact process, but it's a way to try to piece together a path forward in a way that would make sense given what the expectations are. So let me jump back up to the beginning and show what we found. So when I mentioned that we took all the different costs over time and we discounted them down to a single amount, what we came up with is a net present value of $118 million. We then took out of that some fixed revenues like fish tax sharing and grants and debt proceeds that we took out of the major capital expenditures. And with that number, we then said, okay, over the course of 30 years, what sort of cost per year does that represent? And flipping that around, how much revenue will you have to generate to cover that cost? So the revenue requirement we came up with was 1.6 million, 1.63, I guess, slightly higher than revenues that you can adjust. So really, if we keep it very simple, and again, this is not taking into account yet all of the cash flow issues, we saw that a one-time across-the-board increase of about inflation would take care of it. On top of that, I should mention that when we think about this life cycle cost, we are discounting at a discount rate. And in turn, when you're paying or when you're setting rates, you need to be bumping up what your revenue requirements are each year by that amount. So without considering cash flow yet, we came up with about a 2.5% increase and then annual inflation adjustments beyond that. Then we turn to the cash flow. And for that, because of some of these large expenditures that are planned, we had to then think about how to make sure that you'd be covering those expenses. We had two scenarios that we evaluated in which we would try to address that need. Kind of the base case is you set your rate. And so we'll see some figures there that show projected fund balances and how if you just do a 2.5% adjustment plus inflation, it's not enough. But so the two scenarios where we did make rate adjustments above and beyond that, we looked at one where we just had annual increases, not an upfront adjustment, just annual increases. The other one, we looked at a one-time adjustment initially, followed by annual increases. So in other words, take care of a bunch of the gap to begin with, but then have some aggressive rate increases to cover things until you're in a good position. So again, it's not an exact science, but looking at the numbers, it seemed like the first 3 years are the most critical. And I think a lot of that is with the harbor rebuild and some other work going on. And so we said, okay, for the first 3 years, about a 10.4% annual increase would be needed, which is a lot, but it's for 3 years. So it's essentially 30 something, when you compound it, it's 32, 33%, something like that, of a total increase. After that, then it looked like rate increases of 3% each year would be fine. When we looked at a one-time increase followed by increases, we found that a 19% rate increase, which is 15% plus an inflation adjustment, followed by 3 years of 4% increases, and then 3.2% each year would avoid the funding shortfall. So essentially, bigger jump up at the beginning, one time, but then much lower each year after that. So we'll look at some figures of this, but really what we were trying to do is just follow a line and make sure that we didn't get below that line. So here's a quick summary of the different options. And we have also what the mortgage rate would be per foot. And we didn't look at all types of mortgage for comparison, but we looked at permanent mortgage as well as daily transient, just to do some comparison. So here is what rates would look like under those two scenarios. Now, one thing I do want to point out, first of all, 30 years out in the future, numbers that look big, everything's going to look big relative to now. That said, those numbers are out in the 2050, 2051 and beyond. They are probably higher than they need to be. It's really in the next 20 years that we see the most need to cover costs. That said, 30 or 40 years from now, after you build facilities, then they will need to be replaced as well. And so it's just an ongoing process, of course. But so the gold and purple lines, as you can see, they're a little different to begin with, but then they converge over time. And at some point, they could be equivalent. I didn't want to overly complicate it and have year-by-year rate increases. And so we just, after those first 3 years that were different, then we just had the same increase from then on. So now, here is the projected fund balance. And before, just if you're looking at the report, let me explain this figure here. The reason it looks so weird is that we have what's called residual value. And so with a life cycle cost analysis, there's only a certain window that you're looking at. And anything that exists past that window, we bring back to an equivalent value. And so if you build a harbor facility that we think it can last 40 years, but you're only looking at a window of 30 years, then it's got 10 years more of its life left. And so the model will take that into account with a residual value. And in this case, it essentially is returning that money to this capital balance, just to say, this is kind of where we sit. And the text has some discussion about what we think the cost might be in the future and where that stands. But then when we go to the next figure, this only goes to 2050, and it also cuts it off at 0. So we're not showing that big loss under the baseline without the increases. So this shows that while there are some variations, the two scenarios that we considered really are pretty similar. Those initial increases, we see the need to kind of stock up cash. We draw down, and then we start to rebuild. The final batch of big expenses that we projected would be in the late 2030s. Then the balance basically treads water, but then it starts to catch back up again. And so really in 20 years from today, right around here, that's where you potentially have some things to think about. So options about, do we need to keep up these higher rate increases, or could those be alleviated to some extent? But this is, the future is hard to predict, of course. And so this is best guess of what it looks like. Now, the black dashed line here, we just set an amount where we said, well, the working capital balance probably should be maintained at about $1 million in today's value. And that's really just for, if you have emergency repairs or other needs that come up, making sure that you have that buffer. The reason it goes up is because we adjust that for inflation. So that 30 years from now, or 29, that $1 million is worth 1.7. So that's the buffer. We see, that we get close to it in the early 2040s with that higher amount versus the 1 million, which is down here. So after we had looked at that, so we've done the rate study, we then adjusted it and tried to cater the rates to address what we thought the cash flow needs to be. We then looked at how your rates would compare for, again, permanent mortgage and daily transient use to several other harbors. And so table 2 here shows the mortgage rates relative to Cordova. So there's all kinds of calculations. Some were really simple. It was just a flat amount. Others were very complicated in terms of how certain fees applied at certain rates or for certain lengths, but not others, and things like that. But we tried to distill it down here. So if a rate shows up as 1, then it's the same as Cordova. And if it is less than 1, that harbor was cheaper. If it's higher than 1, the harbor was more expensive. And this, we could look at all kinds of different lengths, but this is looking at vessels 20 to 100 feet, according to those tables. So that's why for a lot of these we have a range. For Juneau and Whittier, it's a fixed amount, so it really doesn't change. It's a certain amount per foot. But then others, there's a range. Homer is more expensive in both cases. Petersburg for reserve is sometimes cheaper, sometimes more, and so on. Sitka is always lower for permanent, whereas its transit can be a lot more. So this just kind of gives a sense. Now, this is based upon current rates. And I mean, one of the things you have to think about is, of course, if we make rate changes, what does that do? So, if you were to bump up, just to use an example, if we were to bump up 21%, then Homer at the low end would be the same as what your rates are. Whereas a place like in Juneau, Douglas, and Douglas, Harrison, Aurora harbors, instead of 0.98, if you bumped up 21%, then that would be even cheaper relative to your rates. But this is rates as of today, and yeah, any changes that you make will affect things. However, it is important to keep in mind that most of these harbors, I can't say if it's all of them, but most of them do have a process where they are making annual adjustments. And for example, I know that Juneau has a rate study going on right now, and they may end up having a big increase too. I don't know. Others, like we've done a lot of work with Homer. I know that they basically take the Alaska CPI every year and adjust it. So if you make adjustments using the CPI and other harbors do, then relatively you'll stay the same. Graphically, so here is a comparison just to show it by length. So this is for reserved or permanent moorage and where everybody stands. The bottom line here, that's Unalaska, the International Snowboat Harbor. But otherwise, you see that you're there with the blue line, and Juneau, Sitka, and Valdez are less expensive. Everybody else is more to some extent. Look at daily, or wait, I'm sorry, this is just looking at it a different way. Sorry, this is taking that level of 1 and then just showing how things change to show you that range that we showed in that earlier table. And then whenever you see zigzags, it's because you have jumps where you have a certain rate for a length and then it stays steady. And so then it kind of gets back to normal, and that's why it's changing around. Okay, so here is the comparison then for daily, and it's a slightly different story. For the most part, the harbors that were less expensive for transients, they stayed less expensive, but then there were quite a few that were higher than Cordova, but then became less expensive. For transient use, you are neck and neck with Whittier, but Homer and Sitka, especially, it grows over time. Sitka has this big step up. Then they really shoot up a lot higher. In terms of these comparisons, the question really is, who are your competitors? Obviously, Valdez is your nearest competitor. Whittier's not that much farther behind, so you're kind of neck and neck with Whittier, but more expensive than Valdez. The other consideration, of course, is who your user base is, and Whittier is capturing a lot of people from Anchorage and Matsu. Valdez is capturing people from Valdez and basically up to Richardson. It all just kind of depends on who you're trying to compare yourself to. So I think that is it in terms of what I wanted to cover. Here's the chart that shows that relative comparison for daily. And then, basically we, getting to the recommendations, we had those 2 scenarios, and this just kind of zooms in on the next several years and throws in some historical rates. So from 2018 to 2022, you see your rate progression, and then basically just projecting from that. Under the baseline case, we assume you just adjust by inflation. The other ones, it's one of the 2 plans, as I talked about, and that shows where rates would end up being for the next 8 years from today. So I think that then it gets into the details, which we don't need to go through, but just these are all essentially the inputs into this model that we have for developing these rates. And I think this figure is worth just showing. This kind of maps out the amounts and the frequencies of different expenditures. So you see them. This doesn't include capital, but it includes your steady operations. It includes these periodic maintenance expenses. Every 5 years, we assume that you have some kind of a major expense. And then the impact of bond issues. Assumptions, and that's it. So I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Yeah.
Welcome to Copper Valley Cell Phone Conferencing Service.
The administrator has not yet arrived. The conference administrator has joined the conference. There are 1 attendees on the conference call.
I'll let you guys go ahead and ask questions. Sorry about that.
Okay. Anyone got any questions for Mike? No?
One question that I have is on that same page as the last graph that we were just showing, it shows the maintenance parts and service to maintain the South Harbor 2015 through 2019. Is that factored into how much money we're trying to raise with these rate increases?
Did you hear that, Mike?
I caught most of it, I think. Could you summarize it? It was basically about South Harbor maintenance reductions. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, it was just basically talking about the maintenance and repair servicing costs and stuff. And so I was just wondering if that all figured into what the grand total of like what we were shooting for revenue to cover was.
Sure. Yeah, so the way that came in, so for that major maintenance and repair, we based that on new capital costs. And so with the rebuild of the South Harbor, that's where those start to hit in every 5 years. We did adjust what your that steady operations and maintenance cost was. So then we took this gold line and dropped that down by an amount to basically counteract what those costs would be. So we did take that into account.
Okay.
And I guess the debt expense jumps up because we would be, is that when we're replacing the North Harbor?
Yes.
That's like 2037 or something like that.
Yes, that was with the North Harbor. So we have total of 27 million that was for South Harbor, but then for North Harbor, actually I can up the table. We had 2 issues that were I have to go back to the project. We had a smaller debt issue earlier, but then we had 18 million as the assumption in 2036. So that's where that bumps up. And so that's, it's the uplands improvements, which we assumed would be would get a lot of coverage from grants. And then from the rates that or the revenues that you've generated and saved up. And then for the float replacement in 2036, most of that was planned in as debt in this case.
Anyone else? Krista, you good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, I don't see any other questions, Mike. I appreciate you coming into the meeting with us and explaining it to us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you have follow-up questions that you think of after this, I'd be happy to reply by email or whatever. So.
Okay, I appreciate it. You have a good night.
All right, thanks, you too.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right.
So I'm assuming that was informational for us to use as we move forward into other things and not we're not making a decision on this tonight, doesn't it?
Not tonight, no.
We're not.
No,
Yep.
no, but we will bring it when we,
Sure.
yep. And we'll do a vote on it when we decide what we're going to do. We'll talk about what we want to do and go through the process.
Right. Okay, so we'll move to miscellaneous business. Harbor Master Plan Review.
This is another one I don't expect us to get through. But if nothing else, we can review it and then people can take it home, decide what we want to do or change or whatever, and then we can bring it back and go through those changes. But
So this is our current plan, right?
yes,
As written.
Basically, this first part here is all used, though. It's Old Harbor, 1938, where the old new harbor, new old harbor, whatever, North Harbor.
north, yeah.
Is all rebuilt, so that whole page has got to go. That harbor doesn't exist anymore.
No, that's just telling that when it was built originally.
It says after 41 years, it was rebuilt in 2005. I think that's the current.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. It's just talking about maintenance and our plans, but yeah.
Okay.
But I do agree that it should be relabeled North Harbor, because
I like it.
we'll all go nuts if we keep
I like
this up.
it.
I'm trying to,
The new harbor.
Maybe we should update the, are we going to update this document?
Yeah, I'll go, I mean, any notes I'll go back through it, update it, we can bring it back and continue to update it through meetings or whatever. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's quite a few pages to go through, but whatever we do.
And it looks like we have a plan for some of the things we have on there, the sheet pile, the length of Breakwater Avenue, kind of expanded parking, sidewalks, additional dock space, which we would get later when we put the new floats in, so that's still, but we might move that up from the 20 years into the 5 years, right?
Yep.
As we update this.
And the loading dock is one that's been redone.
Yes, I said that one,
It was done.
we've already got the new decking on.
Yeah. We didn't do support piles, but we did do bracing.
We could do like in 10 years, the evaluation of the entire facility for useful life remaining might be a good time to look at that. Old grid. Mike, here's your chance. Well, we're talking about that whole area getting cleared out, so.
Yeah, after we do the north side, we can just remove that whole piece.
like,
So we're replacing the timbers and stuff on there? That's all I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I know. No, that's all.
That's all I'm seeing. I can't wait till we get going on that.
Yeah, we're past due on that, sorry.
When did this, oh, sorry, 2012.
yep, 20 years ago,
Yep.
Yeah.
the 2012, 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yep.
Gonna get my brain around.
But we're right on with evaluation of entire facility, including based on evaluation, close and remove entire facility. Yeah. Let's all, I would think that we would have to finalize this once we know like the PIDP grant and some of the other stuff, because we'll know more what
Right, yeah, some of these parts won't even, yeah.
won't matter.
Mike's grid won't even matter then, so.
Cruise through that.
Is the approach number 4, the one that Cordova Outboard used to have the fuel dock on.
That's correct.
Did we have somebody look at the substructure with the recently?
Can't remember if P&D did a look at that when they did the assessment of the South Harbor. I'll have to check on that.
Because that's on our 10-year list.
Yeah.
And if we haven't, it'd be a good idea. Number 5. Same thing. Take a good look at it underneath. It's got new
On which,
decking.
oh, approach 5, yeah.
Hmm?
No, I wasn't catching on what you were saying, then you said approach 5. Gotcha.
Yeah, approach
Yep.
5 is kind of same.
Approach 5 is, we just redid it,
Just redid the decking,
Yeah.
right?
which is the loading dock also.
Which is the floating dock. Right, right,
Right?
right.
Yeah.
In 2005.
Right. Wait a minute. No.
So we'd just do the check and see if they check the pilings and under on our 10-year.
Why are they?
The new harbor, okay. New grid looked pretty good. Looked at it again today.
One thing seemed like that, it was kind of handy how the road used to go down where you could pull all the way up down to the end, down next to the grid on the new grid.
Is it getting
And
beat
it
up?
seems like just from prop wash and, whatever, like it's kind of eroded. Like at some point in time, it probably could use like a dump truck load of dirt or something dumped down there.
That's a good idea. Clean that up a little bit. I don't think silt accumulation is really a problem.
No.
It seems like it's more going away than filling up. Like
A lot
Blake
of it's
says.
going away. You hope. The 3-stage dock.
These approaches on the new, or on the South Harbor, pardon me, are all going to be rebuilt in this scope of what we're doing, right?
Well, if we get the total funding, the thought is we're going to remove the one across from my office. That one will go away.
Right.
The two on the ends, 1 and 3, those, well, 3 will go away because it will be the drive down. It will have its own.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It goes that way.
So-
All right.
So 1 will be either, way I understand it, and I don't know for sure, I'll have to look at the plans. I think it was to cut it back some to get the ADA compliant ramp. But I can verify that one, if that was a complete replacement. I thought we were going to reuse part of it, but
So any decisions we make on all that stuff will be hugely dependent on what actually happens and all this. So let's just blast through to the 3-stage dock. And that is, the PIDP is getting
it is, yes.
possibly some love out of that project.
That's the hope, yep. Or that's what will happen.
So, and the Inner Harbor launch ramp. Not the Northfield launch ramp. We don't really have any projects planned for that right now, do we?
No. See, they did do the improvements in 13.
Right?
Yeah, they replaced planks in the pilings in the dock, so
Can we get some new pilings while we have the piling guys here?
get some new pilings?
For the landing crafts to lay on so they don't smush up our bow picker dock.
Well, they don't hit that rock. That's what they do.
They're
Well, they don't hurt the rocks.
No, they lay up against that ramp.
Yeah.
Dock, and then they push against
Yeah.
it as they tie up. There was a piling there, but it broke
There
off.
was a couple there.
It was broke, they're all broke off
Yeah, they're
now.
clean off.
Where were they at?
On that breakwater side of that north ramp, so that you didn't.
Oh,
you
okay, you're
couldn't
talking
drift.
about, not the in harbor one, the other.
Yeah, the in harbor one is gonna get possibly funding for on
So you
upgrade.
couldn't didn't have to worry about hitting those rocks. on the North, south side of
They
it.
could lean on that piling
Yeah.
and keep it in gear and not. Right now, some
They just
reason
push on the dock and.
they favor
mess it all up.
the HDP nice dock instead of the
They push
riprap.
against it and keep their stern off. That doesn't do it any good.
No, it doesn't like it. But that would be a way to deal with that. Is get a couple of pilings for them guys. Or an alternate place for them to do their thing.
Did we ever replace them? It says 5 years on this. Did we ever replace those planks? Cement one?
The cement, a lot of them were replaced when they did the in 13. So this was done in, plan was done in 12 or 13. And they replaced them my first year here.
If there's a third of them replaced, but we haven't replaced any more of them. then-
No.
I don't know, they look good to me, but
What do we have anything planned on the North Containment boat storage area? Is that anything further with the city and designating that more?
No, I mean, we tried to pass a resolution to take it over, like officially, or buy it, or,
Yeah.
and I think the lawyers kind of chimed in on that one, that it's not something that the harbor can do. You know, there was a lot of big plans of doing things, but then they sold off that other lot.
Right.
It's like, well, you don't know when the next
Well,
one's gonna
that's the
sell
thing.
off.
We don't want to.
Yeah,
We don't want to put a huge amount of money into it if we're not sure we can.
we have cleaned it up some, and we've tried multiple ways of kind of marking spaces, but kind of hard without, you know, paving it and putting numbers on it, but that's really expensive.
It would be, and they're heavy things, so it would
Yeah.
ruin the pavement.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't. Parking them long term.
they marked it on the south bill before they put everything in there. They had them spray painted and they put numbers on them. So everybody, when he went in.
Yeah, once a year they'd spray it on the gravel.
Yeah.
And then you went to harbor, you rented one and they give you a number and that's where you parked. It was good for a few years and then they put all the buildings on it. None of that property anywhere is, we can depend on to have
Right.
forever, so.
Right. So. So what are we doing for defining?
We've put little
Basic.
survey flags in the ground. We've done ropes in the back.
I saw the ropes
Yeah.
like those.
Yeah, it's,
And
put a cone there when you go launch your boat so no one steals your spot.
then you come back, somebody's boat there and the cone's gone.
Yeah. It's become, I mean, there's a lot of winter boats stay there now. I think a lot more. We've gotten a lot more in there, so. More permanent, same users every year using the other spots that aren't used up. But
Right.
we pretty much filled up every summer since,
I think for the most part, it's just with the guys going, leave an empty space, there's a good chance you'll lose it. Launch your boat.
Put your trailer back.
yeah.
If not, put your truck in there.
And
Yeah.
we have one guy that puts pallets down there because he's reserving the spot. He's paying for that
We're looking at
Yeah.
this winter and there was 30 boats, I think, out of the water.
spot. Fishermen are doing
That's a
pretty
third of
well.
or 10th of the fleet.
We tried adjusting it. If your boat stalls, then somebody would park over the line and then you'd be all out of line, and it just, once we just kind of gave them control over it, they did really good. I'm kind of surprised down there.
Yeah. You can train a fisherman.
I wasn't gonna say it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that might be, for now anyways, its highest and best use is what we're doing with it. And we don't want to do any expensive development if we don't know.
Somebody comes in and wants to build something, gone anyway. So you don't want to put a bunch of
Right.
posts in there and stuff, or you're just gonna have to tear them all out.
Yeah, because I know we talked about, all kinds of pedestals. There was talk of a gantry crane and water, more water, and it's like, well,
Right.
I mean, it's a lot of money to spend trenching and everything else and winterizing and maintaining just to have it sold out from under you, so.
Is there a city plan in place to begin selling that? So this-
No.
They're open.
But I mean, the one Will Brown had was not available at 1.2 and,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's all that
Not Will.
property's for sale,
what's his name?
Yeah.
Rob Brown.
according to city maps, and they even said the ones in red that are not for sale
Yeah.
could be if you asked about it.
Yeah, anything's for sale.
Where's area A maintenance area?
There's a little map.
Yeah, there's a map, 3
Page
pages
13.
back, I think.
Across the street there where,
Yeah.
the water and electric
Oh,
is.
okay.
Yeah.
Area A. Gotcha. Okay. Breakwater, North Ramp.
It would be nice.
It gets pretty deep out there. Pretty quickly. And are you envisioning just like a little L?
I
Kind
mean,
of
even,
for the-
even just kind of a little bit of an angled one straight, but
Do you want me to just bring a couple wrecks and park them over
no,
there?
I don't want any more wrecks.
You don't want any
Set
more.
them out there.
We may have one in the shipyard you brought back.
That would be good breakwater.
No,
People could tie up and mend their nets on it. The tide was right. So what, do we have any idea of cost of something like that? Have you had any ballparks that,
I don't. I mean, I know just the repairs they did for the North Harbor, the pilings and the dock and everything was like almost, it was $600,000. Guessing it's gonna be, if you're trying to do permitting and everything else, $1 million or so, I don't know. Breakwaters aren't cheap, so. Like you said, it does get deep out there, as you get out far enough where you'd put it.
it
And then,
does, I mean, a lot of people use floating breakwaters. We're just about ready to get rid of a bunch of concrete. Is semi-floating. I don't know. Then we could ask for repair money once it starts to break apart. And it could be seasonal too. In the winter, it would be hard to keep anything except for a real breakwater.
yeah, that's why it would be nice though to have a real one, because you could even leave the dock in place,
Right.
now we can't.
So that's something we can bring back up with more information and see what some options are for that, because it is a really nice all-tide ramp. And we do have room to park boats and things down there that it's definitely being used. So, and that dock is a very nice feature, and it is not going to last too much longer with the abuse it takes. Okay. Any other things you guys are seeing on these other permit parking vehicles and trailer, any other things that you're seeing or?
Just that it needs to be updated and the timelines and stuff.
Right.
Yep.
But are you guys seeing problems that you think people coming in and talking about things that we should address?
Most of the stuff I hear is going to be fixed if they rebuild that harbor. So we get this done.
Yeah, yeah. The floats that are rough shape, the walkways that. What's the future use? I'm trying to figure out the.
The only thing that I hear about from people down there is that maybe it might be a little bit better if we had like slightly better signs. A lot of people, you know, go and park their boat over to use the hose and stuff and don't realize that they're getting paid, you know, charged, you know, daily to do that and stuff. So that was just one thing a couple of people have
A
mentioned.
little bit of signage.
Okay.
They go to wash their boat and leave it there 2 weeks,
Yeah.
then get charged a lot.
Because, okay, Area K and Area J are city land?
That's what I was, those little slivers.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was just seeing Area K, future access, Area J, future use area.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's a right away, right? Yeah, right away.
Oh, it is right away. So it could never really be used for anything.
Can, a little bit.
Oh, I see. It's like a leg of the other bigger Area K.
Yeah, yes.
And Area J. Seems like it's already being utilized.
It is.
What's that, Jay? Yeah. Not by the city.
Not by the city. But, looking at the photo,
Kay's using it too.
somebody's parking stuff on that.
It's getting good use.
Just barely didn't build on it though, didn't they?
Kay's being used too, by got a loader parked in sometimes in there.
Yeah. Our bigger docks, so the city dock out front, that,
I noticed one of the steel pilings on the end by the fuel dock is tore off, pretty much.
Oh, the ocean dock.
Yeah.
Yes.
ocean dock.
Or the city, well, that's the city dock?
Yeah. City dock.
Oh, yeah, the
Oh,
old
that's a
Coast Guard
municipal
dock.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Are we gonna put the camels back in?
Yeah, plan on doing that in the first opener.
Okay,
Not all of them.
okay,
I think three or four we're gonna put in, and not put them at where the crane is.
leave that open,
Yeah.
so bow pickers.
Yeah, the bow pickers, because they're like 2 more feet from the dock and
Yeah,
it's harder to get to it, so.
I've seen them get out on them, I'm like,
You
When they
walk
used
out
to
onto
leave
them.
yeah, they're slippery.
Yeah, that's the plan if the weather's good, is to put them out.
Okay. They're nice when you have a bigger boat to go against, because those galvanized things weren't really designed for, they're pretty unfriendly for
Yeah.
sliding along anyways. God, I haven't noticed anything other than that with that dock.
The T-Dock's Coast Guard, so I don't know what we do with that, so.
We
Yeah.
still do maintenance on it when requested, basically?
That's correct. They're in the middle of a lease negotiation, right, Kevin? Yeah. Yeah, we'll see where
And
that
are they,
comes out.
we'll know more later if they're requiring
Yep.
bigger upgrades and things, okay. And the ocean dock,
Somebody really grabbed on that one piling. I don't know who did it, but it really tore that.
Yeah, that one,
Really,
we were hoping to have Harris Sand and Gravel replace it when he was here doing the fenders, and he didn't.
Is this something we could have with the
We might-
harbor or the South Harbor?
Yeah.
friendly People putting in piling?
Yeah, that's,
And our permit for marine mammals will go that far?
Sure.
So while they're coming by, we'll have them throw a couple in that north ramp. I know we put some new ladders on.
Yep. We've replaced it all, I think all but one. For ladders, all new stainless steel ladders. And replaced a lot of the bull rail, not done, but
So we have current condition fair at that time. Have we done any other? I know some of the concrete's a little punky on the edges and stuff.
well, the concrete, when they replaced a lot of the bull rail, they repaired the concrete
Okay.
with the new spacers, because those were ripped out. So to put
Right.
new one in, they had to do that, so, yep.
So would you say that its current condition is no longer fair? But
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's fair. I'd say it's in good,
just serviceable? Switch it up to serviceable.
yeah, I think it's in pretty good shape.
I'm really glad those ladders got replaced. They were.
Yeah.
All right.
talk
take
about
a
building that
refresh ourselves on that.
travel list, to try to build a bigger travel lift deal that in years to come.
Well, maybe in years to come, but nothing right away. Yeah.
We would also need a different travel lift dock.
Yes, the piers will not hold a
We're maxed out.
bigger
so-
one, yeah.
Too narrow too. Probably lift anything bigger.
Too narrow, too light. How's the travel lift doing? I know we were getting some work done on it and
Yeah, next week, the travel lift tech will be in town to do the annual inspection, to go through it, I think 3 days or so, go through everything with us, make a couple repairs. One side, the winches are running really slow. You have to keep compensating back and forth, and the boat wants to spin. Yeah, we ordered some new straps for it. Those are coming. And then after this year, we'll replace all the cable on it, put new cable. So it's time to do that. But, yeah, I mean, maintenance.
right.
Yeah, because we replaced the steering bearings, trunnion bearings, I guess. I don't know what they are, but big giant bearings. We replaced those. Jerry did those, and it was time. A lot of water runs down those, and those columns we found out are filling up with water. We found out last year, the big columns. So
Fill up with rainwater.
So we actually got a hold of Travel Lift, the engineers, and they told us we can drill a hole. Certain place has to be in the exact spot they tell us. So we're gonna have the tech do it, or at least watch us do it when he's here. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Sometimes you get tired of trying to keep the water out. Might as well just make sure there's a way for it to get out when it gets.
Right. Yeah. Of course, we haven't expanded down there like we'd like to, but
Expanded the fill, right.
yeah.
And how's things going, just so, with the Dutch Marine Industries lease and things?
I don't think any of that's been decided on or even really talked about too much, right? Kevin, the planner, can talk to it.
Actually, the latest update is they're looking at building something a little bit nicer than just the Connex structure. We've finalized most of the terms. It's just now we're figuring out what the lease is going to be for the payment portion. So then once that's done and they have their site plan put together, then that will go and be reviewed by the city council before the lease gets approved.
So it's still in progress then?
Yeah, it sounds like it's getting close. So, they've been in pretty regular contact. They were affected by the fire out at the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been dealing with a lot of that stuff and just haven't been able to put too much energy into that currently. Or until recently.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yep.
And so I guess that's expanding that lift area or the travel lift facility is something we'll just keep on the radar, and we're looking for opportunities to, and maybe across the road.
I don't know. If we could get a lot of that fill taken out.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
but depending on what project's going on and
Yeah.
what happens, that's another option, right? We could cross the road. Before we switch to the south containment, anybody else have anything on the north in this first pass through this plan?
You have to look it over.
The south. It's going to change a lot with this new upgrade to the harbor, or at least the parking should.
Mm-hmm.
Harbor expansion. Oh, where am I? Maybe I got lost here. North. So
You're
Pretty
good.
much what we're thinking about anyway, but
I think we should address this after we figure out how much funding we have to do what we've already defined. Still good demand for bigger boat slips?
Well, there's a big giant one on the end of H.
I see that. I see that. It's bigger than he thought it was.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, well, it would put to work those T's at the end of the docks for sure. There's a blank page after that. Does anybody have any other things that they want
whatever.
to start the master plan thinking about? Cover over the harbor? Kind of like a little bubble.
like the idea.
Kind of nice. Keep it in-
One you could open up and close.
Yeah,
Yeah, like a stadium.
nice day.
Yeah.
Hard to know when what you're gonna get rebuilt and what not. And if you get that grant for the North Harbor, then what you're gonna be doing with the sides that are in that grid there, so it's kinda, well, somebody makes up their mind.
Oh, we made up our mind. It's gone.
Done? I never heard the council.
It's in the PID grant.
Yeah. And then you got the Forest Service dock that everybody's gonna fight over. Then you can put your fuel dock in somewhere, but that's all, you don't know what the funding's gonna be on anything. So
Right.
you can't do a lot.
Yeah, the north side definitely is dependent on the PID grant, so, I mean, but it's pretty much a sure thing.
And
That's what I'm going with.
how much decisions are we waiting for on the south side? Just some of the approach details you were saying? There were some issues that still weren't nailed down? Or is it more of like, how much are we gonna get for our money once we finally decide? to
Yeah,
do
I mean, a lot of it is that of what
Yeah.
we're gonna be able to do, and that extra that we need to do the bulkhead.
Right,
No.
because we've been playing with funny numbers up until
Yeah, so I mean,
we actually get
Yeah.
contracts out, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's hitting a moving target.
Right now it is, yeah. And then hopefully, you know, once it's out and we get some people throwing us some other ideas, they'll come back with what they think would be a good fit and configuration and all that.
And we'll be looking at 20 nice slips, basically.
All 200 foot.
200 footers.
Yeah, that, talking earlier about people talking about going to the Senate and the House to see if we get 7 million more or something like that. Did you
No word.
Yeah, I was wondering,
Yeah.
I've been listening to it, see if anybody even brought it up. But,
Yeah, I heard it wasn't brought up.
no, they're talking about Anchorage and they're talking about Nome, but I didn't hear anything else.
Yeah.
They want 120 million for Anchorage or something.
Yeah.
Build that dock that they put $1 billion in already.
Yeah, I know Homer was down there asking for money for their study they want to do because they want to build a harbor on the other side of the breakwater. Or more of a port.
We need to sell it as some sort of strategic defense program. Anything, that's all getting lots of funding. But, I'd say we took a swing through master plan review, and we need to review it and kind of make some notes. I think we bring it up another time. I know Kenny has some things that he might want to mention, and be good for us to
And I mean, even.
bring it back up.
I mean, if you find things that are, definitely there's things that are outdated, but updates that I can do easily without, you know, a commission requirement or something like that, just dates or something. You can email them to me and I can put them in, so, and then we'll bring it back and review it again anyway, so.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's some that were really simple, right? So
Right. Yeah.
When we get it next time, it'll be a little bit
Right.
cleaner.
We'll make
and
it
just
cleaner every
keep work
time.
it.
Yep.
That sounds good. You bet.
So, since this plan is a decade old, if you are going to update it, I think that it'd be very prudent that you do public outreach multiple ways to get, just to vet it a little bit more.
Mhm.
You know, so I mean, we should do some like roundtables where you bring in different user groups to sit around, do some public open houses where you just invite the city as a whole, and just make sure that you get more feedback so that it's not just, well, I've heard this person say this, and I've heard this person. So just so we can make it a little bit of a larger, more public process.
A little more than just a maintenance plan too?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yep,
That's all.
Yeah, good idea.
thank you.
Well, it kind of segues us to audience participation, since we've had some great participation there. Steve, any participation?
Just listening.
Okay. Then we go on to commission comments. Any things we want to see on the next meeting?
Yeah, I didn't mind the comparisons up there. Didn't know exactly how we set in all the harbors
It
in
was
the
good to
state.
see, yeah.
I don't think we're charging anybody too much for anything, especially after we get the new harbor built, where it's got good power and you're not scared to break loose from your stall or the whole float going with you. Yeah, so that that boat's come up pretty close.
Not every harbor allows you to mobilize your dock and take it with you.
And but the whole thing on your I get my plan here. We can't really do much on it until we find out what funding we have for this harbor and then for the North Harbor. It's hard to say we're going to do this or want to do this, and we don't know if that's what we need.
Right, right. There's a lot of things in the plan that will shake out as we figure out what's happening sooner than later, for sure.
Airplane dock and a fuel dock, until you get any funding, you don't have any idea. And then some of that property is owned by the city, and you gotta figure out what their plan is with it. I'm done.
Go ahead, Mike.
I just, lots of information to take in and stuff. I feel like I'm gonna go home and study this stuff, and I'll have more stuff for next time. The one thing that I was noticing though is that it looks like into what we're, trying to make our harbor rates to reach a goal. And the one thing that I did notice is that our maintenance costs have been super high the last couple of years, doing all the work, trying to keep the harbor up and keep it from going away. And, that might be a little bit of money savings that, we're not going to have to keep dumping money into all that stuff for quite a while, hopefully anyways.
Yeah, if I look at it like that money that's not being spent on the south side when it's done is gonna go into some of the north side, the piers, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there may be some, but it's still gonna be a lot of maintenance.
Yeah, and on that, I think, I don't know if it would have made sense for us to, I understand theoretically it would make sense for us to have rates high enough so that we could have afforded to do all this without asking for grants, but
I feel like in order to achieve that, you would push a lot of people out of the harbor.
I don't think we can afford it. Yeah, you're kind of in this thing where when you look at the debt service for that major harbor expansion, it's kind of like, well, we're going to be in the same boat. It's not likely that we're going to be able to raise rates high enough so that we can absorb that.
That was my note several times in here. At what point do we start pushing users
Right.
into other?
There's gotta be a tipping
or
point.
Other,
Right.
other methods of owning a vessel.
I know a couple boats that, as the flats has been shut down, they moved to Valdez.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have to be here, so they have another alternative.
Valdez is a lot cheaper.
66 cents.
You get them build a houseboat, basically, what are you gonna do, park in their harbor?
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I thought would be super interesting is this chart on page 13, is if it would have went back, it's just projecting everything from now forward. I was really interested in seeing, like, if you went back 5 years and look at where things were at, for the recent history and stuff too.
Yeah, that one chart would be real interesting. Because we didn't have any debt expense until this last.
Yeah, really little was the travel lift as anything we took for loans or anything.
Yeah, that debt expense there, 2037 is alarming.
Hard.
What doesn't Kodiak have theirs set up?
I meant to call Kodiak because I know their rate study, I'd brought it here a handful of years ago.
Right.
And they were talking like an 18% increase and then doing their increases, and I don't know if they actually followed through on that or not. I know Valdez is doing their annual, I think, CPI, but, their annual stall rent is really, I don't know, less than $1 more than ours a foot, so they're not a lot lower than that, but they are lower in transient and stuff like that. That's a big one.
Kodiak you're talking about?
No, Valdez, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Valdez, yes.
That is definitely one I think is an easy tipping point, is that transient fee. Because those people don't have annual stalls here, and, you raise it too much and they're just gonna be like, we're just not gonna come in, or we're gonna fish the other side all the time, and spend less time here maybe fishing the flats, if any. So,
I think we're seeing that.
yeah,
Not just because of the transient fee.
right, but yeah.
All the things, a short number of hours out and
You're
everything.
saying if we raise the transient fee, we'll keep
It's like, wait a minute. How high can we
Public
go?
meeting.
yeah, maybe not a bad thing.
It was also interesting. I just walked the docks in Kodiak for the last 2 days, and out of curiosity, looking at the construction and the different ages, and some of them that I was thinking, oh, these look pretty nice, and others going, oh, I think ours are holding up better than some of this. And they definitely had, like, we're reusing some of what was left over from another, like a project where they replaced floats, had pieces for skiff floats and stuff like that. And, you know, it was kind of, it was like, oh, well, they're putting them to work. And they were definitely another era, though.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it was interesting to see a mix. But lots of the concrete floats had resurfacing. You know, it was, I don't think they have as hard of a freeze thaw cycle as we do in some of the stuff, but it was a lot of repairs on the docks. That some of it coming apart. Well, I think it covers that discussion covers my input. Oh. Anything for the next meeting for anybody? Have anything they want to?
I know the next meeting will fall on a Wednesday, so I probably won't make it.
June 8th or something like that, I think.
I historically start losing participation.
Yeah, June 8th.
About this time of year.
I usually I leave on Wednesdays and afternoons, so I won't be here.
So you can get your spot?
Well, when it opens
So
the
we can
morning.
get there.
I just had a question for Tony. Did you make arrangements to have Cam 2 out on the old city dock there? Or what happened with that?
No, they're in where they normally are.
Oh, really?
Because, I mean, 60's out on the city dock. Yep. Need another crane.
Yeah.
That comes with the PID.
Nice one.
And do they pay the same rate, usage rate?
Yep.
Are those rates looked at all in this study?
He received all the rates, so whether he put them in, I don't know. Oh, yeah.
I do see the fund revenues, but as compared to other places, I didn't see.
I feel like we definitely need to look at those if we're going to be raising the harbor rates a bunch more too.
Yeah, we raise those rates every year too. Yeah, the dockage use and the tonnage use for wharfage.
Any new players? 60 North, Cam 2, anybody else using the
I've not had.
cranes or asking to? I'm sure there'd be a lot of direct marketers.
Yeah, no direct marketers are using.
I haven't had anyone else come to me and talk to me about it. So, I mean, you got the kelp farmers and stuff, but yeah, I don't know what they're doing yet.
I think most of them have harvested by now, the kelps.
Yeah, I think kelp is wrapping up.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for coming out.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.